want to start with omelets. I have a lot of questions for both of you about the creative process of this film, but there's a lot of folks in the audience who work in different disciplines within cinema, and what they may not know is just how involved you are with every level of the film and how specific you are in terms of preparing your cast for the story that you're envisioning to tell. Can you talk to us a little bit about working with Alba and about how she perfected her work with the omelet?
Well, it was important to have her really flip it. I think it was funny to have like the greatest singer in the world, and then, you know, she's cooking an omelette and just like ignoring her voice, and Alba didn't know how to do it, so she went for classes for 2 weeks to do that. But she does a double flip. You see that? Not just a flip, like a double flip. And Angelina was quiet, like she didn't know how to behave in front of someone that was like just flipping an omelette. She's singing Casta Diva from Norma. But yeah, I think, I don't know, I guess most directors are very into the details. Those things are essential to create a sense of a family. I think that's what it is. They became Maria Callas' shadow. Ferruccio, still alive. He's 88, I think, and we got to talk to him, so it was very helpful. And Bruna passed away in the 90s, so we only had him. It's a whole journey to represent real people, and how to honor them throughout fiction. This is not obviously a documentary. There are a lot of things that are based on reality, but a big chunk of it is obviously fiction, which is what I know what to do. I don't know. I love documentaries, but I don't know how to do that.
Well, thank you. Just to give you all a sense of just the attention to detail as Pablo is known for with his films, but everything, including the omelet flip, was delicately thought about. With this film, Pablo, you've talked about how you wanted it to be a reimagining of the final week of Maria Callas' life, and that you wanted it to deal with the duality between her famous opera characters and who she is as a person, and that you didn't want this to be a story about imitation, but about inhabiting Callas and your interpretation, perhaps. And can you talk a little bit about that and how you worked with Stephen Knight, the screenwriter, to help set him on his way as he created the script?
Yeah, I was very surprised because this idea of La Callas and Maria was very real, and she often talked about it. If you go to YouTube, you would find a number of interviews that she gave on television at her apartment, and she was the one making that vision. Being Maria, the one like the human at home, and La Callas like the music icon. And I didn't write the script, Steve did it, but when the invitation was just to set it up in the very last week of her life, for me, if you look at her career, she sang multiple operas, but out of the 8 that she sang the most, all of them bel canto, from that tradition in Italian. 7 of them were tragedies, meaning she was dead as the main character on the stage in the very last scene of the opera. So I believe that she became the sum of the tragedies that she played on stage. And that was the sort of the starting point of this film. How can we create a fragment of time where we get to see her as someone has dedicated her life to relationships, family sometimes, friends, and obviously to her audience, and now she's the one that decided to, whatever she's going to do, sing in this case, but for herself. So it's a tragedy, as you just saw, but it's also, I think, it's a celebration of her life through the vision and the sort of aesthetics of the opera. So that's what we discuss with that so often. Can we film an opera? Can we take it into a cinema? And that was kind of the thing. But I think mostly it's a celebration for us of her life, and hopefully a movie that could connect opera to people that maybe is not very aware of opera. Maria Callas was very criticized, especially she sang professionally up to 67, 68, and then she completely retired, and then had a lot of emotional problems, physical problems, illness, and her voice was really gone. And in '74, she went out to a tour, did 60 gigs all over the world. And in those concerts, she chose the music that the people liked the most. And she was very criticized because she was taking the opera out of context. And was just using, like, I don't know, famous areas from different operas in a concert. And what she wanted to do was basically to put the opera back where it started, which is basically to the masses, to the people. So this movie has that aim to kind of respect that feeling, that intention to put opera in the ears of people that not necessarily is an expert, and maybe open it up a little bit and make it more popular, hopefully. We'll see.
I do want to come back to the music that you've included in the film, because I know you made some very specific choices, and you mentioned at the top that you grew up watching opera. But Ed, Pablo just hinted to the fact of talking about bringing you onto the project, and you had the Herculean task of not just several locations, but several different timelines. And you have said in interviews that you worked to incorporate Callas's psychology in the use of the color and the temperature and the variety of the tones. Can you talk a little bit about how you achieved that?
Well, basically, for me, her life was the opera. So, and Pablo always said there isn't a difference between opera and cinema. So for me, then it was like to explore her life in this heightened reality, the way an opera would be represented. So for me, there are two factors. One, it's this moving camera, which is kind of like the moving stage of proscenium, and it's a way for me that you put the audience in her world and with her. And then the other way was how to use color, because they use color in an opera not as a realistic or representational way, but in a heightened reality or a psychological way. And my background was painting, so I've always studied the ideas of Joseph Albers and even Wolfgang Goethe in 1810 wrote a book, Interpretation of Color, of how you use color to heighten people's perception of what they're experiencing. So I think even the staging or the sets, like her bed is, this grand bed that no one would have ever possibly lived in, and the way the light is in the room is more theatrical. So that was all to build the world that she was part of, that she never left. She even said, the stage is my mind and my soul is the opera. So that's what I tried to be true to with Pablo.
Achieved beautifully. I'd love to do a follow-up there about your choices to mix 35 millimeter, 16 millimeter, and Super 8, along with using some vintage lenses that we got to talk about a little bit that you had used during El Conde. Can you talk about how you chose which film stock would work with which timeline?
Well, for me, it was, we had so much reference material to observe her. And so it really worked that we use these different formats. The Super 8 was the people that were closest to her, where she let her guard down, where she wasn't always so mannered and she knew exactly how she wanted to present herself. Then in her imagination, the documentary film crew, and so we shoot in Super 16. Then there's the black and white, her memory of her past, the 35 millimeter, and then the color, which is the contemporary time of her life. So I think all these elements and the way it's cut allows you to enter her interior world. And to me, that's the hardest thing to do as filmmakers, is how you enter the interior world of the character without voiceover, that you find out something about her emotions.
And how would the two of you prepare? We talked a little bit about the Madame Butterfly scene, and I'm so sorry, I'm forgetting the name of the opera with the men and the chorus who come up to her and that beautiful lighting that you had. How did you collaborate in terms of the visual language you were looking to achieve with some of the grander set pieces?
Well, there's something that I think comes from Steve, that we like embrace it visually, because I think that perception in cinema can be very, I don't know, I wouldn't say boring, but like very usual. I mean, we don't see life. It's like that there's a cut on him, a cut on me, and then a cut on you, and then a wide with the three of us, and then maybe a shot from behind, so we see us, and then you. I think the perception is like we look at things, we have memories, we look at a phone, we get a message, we look at a movie, we have memories. It's more, our connection with our perception is very private, and it's filled with a number of things that we cannot explain, that we're seeing all the time. So in that, trying to figure out that relationship with her perception and music, or through music, we created these different situations where her perception of reality and music became real. And that is the scene that you mentioned. And then there's another one, and then there's something that's very funny, that I worked very hard for a number of years on creating a musical map of the film. So every time that we hear a piece of music, that piece of music comes from an opera and has a very specific dramatic context in that opera. So what I wanted to do is to have that, to create a similarity in what that piece of music was doing in that opera, but in our film. So it's like a kind of like a breach of content, dramatically speaking, in between the opera and the movie. But in order to do that, you needed to subtitle the opera, right? So you would understand the relationship. And then we did that, and I saw it in the editing room, it would just kill the movie. Because every 10 minutes there was a scene that was subtitled, and it became so rational. And we were talking about at the beginning. And so we just get rid of all that. And then I thought that I would just wasted 2 years of my life listening to music and reading the arguments of the opera and then reading ours and trying to create a connection. But it does work anyway. And I think that is the biggest lesson. If you take out the words and you don't know exactly what she's saying, singing in Italian, and what is the context of what is she saying, where is she saying it, it works anyway. Because the music is like such a powerful emotional content that you can still make that connection. And I think that is the biggest lesson on how probably Callas lived her life. I don't think she made much of a difference in between her quotidianity and her work on stage. Was someone that, you know, and it's very scary for us, especially for me, because I know there's a lot of sound people here. But it's someone that trained every single day of her life, and just sang for certain hours a week. So the kind of training, I think at some point you lose the interaction with reality and everything is music.
Thank you. You saved me from having to try to pronounce all the songs that I noticed were in the film, because that would have been deeply embarrassing. So thank you for talking about the musical choices, because there are so many famous pieces and you clearly have a deep emotional resonance with them. In terms of kind of the emotionality of the film, Pablo just spoke about how it kind of takes us through her interiority and where she was at in that moment, but there's a lot of emotional camera work that's happening as well throughout. And sometimes you can see on the side of the frame that the camera is kind of almost moving and breathing a little bit, and you have to pay attention to it because it's all gorgeously done. But you have a lot of Steadicam, and you just kind of, you notice that everything that is happening on every level is in support of the story and in support of what Callas is experiencing. But sometimes I felt like the camera was breathing with Angelina's performance, like with the notes. Was that intentional? How did you go about setting up some of those shots, like especially the first one that opens the film?
Well, that was the work of the operator, Pablo. No, I mean, the one thing that I really love to work with the director is to improvise, to go in with a plan, but then to be in the moment with the performance. And Pablo operated this film, and he knew the music better than anybody. So he was in the rhythm of, I always say, images have a rhythm like music has a rhythm. And so I believe the way he edited the film, he captured the rhythm of the performance through what the camera saw. And that gives an expression and feeling about what you're looking at.
So I had the actors in front, I was operating the camera, but I had Ed right behind me. Like, yeah, but it's the second movie we do it like this, and it's incredible communication. It's just, he's very close to me, and he has his monitors here, and it's like a unit of people, you know, and as you said, the camera is often very close to her. And there is something that is important that I'm sure most of you notice is how the sound is captured out of her. With a number of microphones, that's not the classic sort of lavalier plus the boom, and not only in the singing sequences, but in general, we were into her perception of sound too. So in order to do that, we were trying to capture not only what she could be listening at, but the sound that would emerge from her, that she could listen to herself.
I want to, I'm sure you all caught that, but obviously, like the fact that Pablo was operating the camera during El Conde when someone was up on a crane, and now again, were you actually behind the camera in that opening shot when Angelina's singing directly at the camera?
Of course, yes.
That was
yes.
you, yeah.
That was her first day.
That was her first day.
Our first day, her first day.
Way to just, do an easy layup for like what was a very untechnical film.
It was, we created like a progression in terms of the amount of people that would be in front of her when she was singing. And the first day, it was actually in Greece in a little theater. And we went to, and it was almost like filming like an intimate kind of sex scene when you say, everyone's out, But it was the same thing, but just to have her be comfortable, and that her two kids stayed, that they were working the production. It was Ed, the sound team, and then the grips, and that's it. There were like 6 or 7 people. And then she sang that, which is the opening of the film. And I didn't want to sort of hide the fact that we were going to have like a very well-known actress playing a very well-known singer. I thought it was good to just face it right away and have her sing, looking at the lens with a tight shot of her face, and then start the movie. And then the second time she sang, there were more people, and the last time was in La Scala with, I don't know, hundreds of people in front of her.
You said 400 to 500 extras, right, for that Anna Bolena Mad song?
No, that certainly was CGI, but no,
Okay.
we didn't have to. That would have been very expensive. No, but the way that it's done, I'm sure most of you know, but it's a man called John Warhorse that's dedicated his life to work with singers actors that are singing, never in opera. So Angelina has an earpiece that is hidden in his hair or eventually erased if we see it, the wire. And she would listen to Callas and the orchestra, and no other sound would emerge in the stage. There were no speakers, there were no... so it was everything, the only thing that we heard was her voice in a very specific pitch and in the structure of the melody that has to be truly perfect. So then we just mixed it and did the sync work. That was nothing very technological, it was just work, like something very, like a frame by frame, you adjust it, but it's the only way to do it because she had to sing it. You can't cheat in opera, it's not like pop music or rock music. And she trained for 7 months and plus production every single day. Just to get the melody right, the piece of the 2 minutes, sometimes 3 minutes of the singing. And it was not only very helpful and to make the movie believable, but it was the right way for her to approach the character, to understand Maria really well.